I raised my nephew as my own son because my sister didn't want him. Now her daughter is jealous of her brother because of their age difference. When I was 43 and my sister was 47, she became pregnant with my nephew Luke. My sister and her then boyfriend, who is now her husband, didn't show any interest in Luke when he was born, so I took on the role of caring for him. I got my grandmother to help, who was a great support and an angel. She watched over him while I was in my last year of high school, in exchange for me cleaning and cooking for her at the weekends. My parents weren't much help either. They would give my sister and her husband didn't want to deal with us anymore, so my grandmother and I were the only ones taking care of Luke. A year after I graduated from high school, I was kicked out with my nephew because my parents, sister and her husband didn't want to deal with us anymore. She said she wished she'd never given birth to him. I went straight to my grandmother and we visited a family law attorney. I got custody of him and my sister, and her husband signed over their rights to me. So I'll be calling Luke my son, not my nephew. From then on I lived with my grandmother. She went to community college and worked part-time while she looked after my son. It was a lot of work, especially when my grandmother passed away when Luke was 6. In her will, she left 90% of her things to me. This event prompted my parents and sister to reach out to me, but it was all under false pretenses to reconnect and meet my son. However, the reunion didn't last long. I made it clear to them that they could either behave appropriately or never see us again. My dad chose to reconnect with my son and me, and now we're close. On the other hand, my mom and I don't talk much, but she treats Luke kindly. When Luke was 8, both my sister and I both got pregnant. That's when my sister decided she wanted my son back and started telling him that my husband and I wouldn't love him anymore. Once my sister's son arrived, she said that we wouldn't love him anymore. For context, my husband met Luke when he was 5, and we were already together for a year before that meeting. My husband treats Luke like his own. We got married when my son was 7, and we adopted him when he was 9 with his permission. We discovered that my sister was spreading these hurtful ideas when Luke broke down crying one day, expressing fear that we would abandon him. Once his younger brother was born, he explained what my sister and her husband had been saying, that we reassured him it would never happen. Luke knows he's not my biological son, but he is undoubtedly my son. After that, I cut contact with my sister and her husband again and pursued family and individual therapy for my son. When I finally gave birth to his younger brother, I made it clear that our love for him hadn't changed. About 2 years later, when my sister reached out, I decided to go low contact with her, with my son's approval. My husband and I live comfortably, while my sister and her husband sometimes struggle financially. My kids engage in extracurricular activities. They get to enjoy activities and receive gifts, and they go on a big family trip every summer. My sister and her husband, on the other hand, can't afford much. When my niece was around 9, my sister started making comments about how I needed to pay for this or that for my niece. I told her it wasn't my responsibility. I gave my niece the gift she wanted and took her out from time to time. It wasn't even close to how I treated my own kids. Now my second son is turning 17, and my husband and I were discussing getting him an affordable starter car just as we did for Luke when he turned 17. Simultaneously, my niece is also turning 17. My sister told her she'd get her a car, but she can't afford to buy one. So she asked me to do so, but I refused, explaining that I hadn't promised her a car and it's not my responsibility to provide one. My sister got upset and didn't talk to me for a while. After that, when my son turned 17. When his birthday came around, we surprised him with a car. A couple of days later, my niece called me in a state, asking why I was treating her differently from her brother. I explained that while she's my niece, she's not my son, and I can't give her the same things. I told her that, as my son's aunt, my role is to give birthday and Christmas presents and to be there for him when he needs me. I made it clear that her brother will always be more important to me than she is, despite my calm explanation. She kept on yelling and saying I was being unfair, before hanging up. My sister then called to criticize me for doing more. I pointed out that if she hadn't promised a car or my money to my niece, none of this would have happened. It's been a couple of days and I'm still receiving calls from some family and some of my sister's friends, calling me nasty names and saying other things. I do feel a bit guilty because my kids did grow up with more and I suppose I could have helped more. So am I the jerk for what I said to my niece? Update 1. We decided to meet at a park that's a few minutes away from my home. When we met, Emily seemed normal but a little bit tired. I told her I didn't mean to hurt her in any way, but she needs to understand that it's not my job because I'm not her parent. She said she understood that, but she was jealous that her brother and Justin got everything they wanted. I told her that Luke isn't her brother, but her cousin, because of how things happened. Secondly, they don't get everything they want, they work for it. They get good grades, do chores and stay out of trouble for the most part. I then asked her the real reason for why she was acting like this. This was a new problem for her. She started crying and said it wasn't fair that Luke and Justin get everything they want while she gets barely anything. She said that Luke is locked out of life because he was adopted by my husband and me. She said she deserves to have what my sons have. Family. I have to take care of her too. I told her that she is part of my family. But not my child. I do love her, but she's not my responsibility. I then asked her why she feels so strongly about it. She said that, even though her parents take good care of her, she feels like she's just an obligation to them. When she gets jealous because she thinks we don't view the boys as an obligation. She thinks we're a family that's always together, always works through problems and helps each other. Even though I stayed in her life and took her out with my family, she always felt jealous that she felt like she was second place and that I should take her in with no problem, since I took in Luke. I told her that I understand her feelings, but I'm not going to treat her as my kid. I didn't raise her, but I do love her. It's her parents' job to get her a car or to help her get one. She got more upset and said that I clearly don't care about her, so she left. I texted her to say that I do care for her, but I'm not her mum and it's not my job. When I got home, my husband and I talked and we decided to call my sister. I told her that my family and I are going to go full no contact. My sister then asked how I was going to get in touch with Emily. I told her that Emily is almost an adult and that she can contact me if she wants. She then asked if I was going to get Emily a car. I said no and told her that it's her job as Emily's mother to act like it. Emily needs her to be a mum. I hung up the phone. I blocked and deleted her number. The next day, my mum called. She thinks I should give Emily some money for a car if I don't want to give her one. I told her I wasn't going to do that and hung up because I don't want to cause a fight. I then called my dad and explained everything. He thinks I'm right. Later, my dad called to ask if he could come over on Wednesday. When he showed up, he was visibly upset. My mum gave a big chunk of money out of my parents' retirement fund to my sister. This has caused my parents to have a huge fight, which led my dad to pack a suitcase and stay in a hotel for a bit. Now, I'm in no contact with them. My sister and mum and I'll be going low contact with my niece for now. Update 2. About a week after the post, I decided to talk to Emily and we agreed to meet at my home. I asked everyone not to be home because I wanted her and me to talk privately. When she showed up, she didn't really want to look at me and I asked her if I could give her a hug. She nodded her head, and as soon as I hugged her, she started crying. She said she was sorry for how she'd acted, but I told her she didn't need to apologize. I asked her about how her parents treat her, to get a better understanding of the situation. She told me that her dad treats her well. He tries to spend time with her, but is busy because he works 2 jobs. My sister is home more, but she usually just keeps to herself and doesn't really like to be bothered. I then asked her if she feels like she's been neglected. She said no, just sometimes they don't have family time because her parents argue a lot, especially when it comes to money. Sometimes her mum does make her feel like an obligation, but she knows that they do love her. I brought up her referring to Lucas, her brother, and asked if she truly felt that way about him. She explained that she sees him as a cousin, but thought that if she played the brother card. I asked her if she knew how I ended up adopting Luke. She confirmed that she knew and that her dad had explained what happened. Apparently my sister had made it sound better than it was, whereas her dad had told her the complete truth. I then asked her if she would like to spend a fun day out with me on Saturdays. She was really excited and said that she would love that. So that weekend, we went to a restaurant she had been wanting to try, had a good time, and then went to a bookstore because she loves reading, and I got her a couple of books she wanted. I had to cancel our second weekend away because Justin ended up in hospital. He was at football practice when he got tackled, which knocked the wind out of him and caused a bad asthma attack. This happened on a Friday and Justin stayed at the hospital until Sunday. Emily and I were supposed to go out on Saturday, and that morning I called her and told her I had to cancel. She started yelling at me before I could tell her why. I said I never cared about her and hung up. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I sent her a text saying that I didn't mean to hurt her, but Justin was in the hospital and that we can have our day next weekend. I never heard back from her. 2 days ago, my family and I were out for a family night when my neighbors called to say that they called the cops because someone was vandalizing one of our cars. When we got home, the cops were there and it was Justin's car. The car there were scratches on the car, some dents paint, and 2 broken windows. My husband and I checked the security footage, and we could clearly see Emily and someone else vandalizing the car. My husband gave the video copy to the police, and Emily and her friend got arrested the next morning. The next morning, my sister and mum came to my house, screaming that I was ruining my niece's life and that I should drop the charges. My husband is adamant that we don't drop the charges, and Justin and Luke agree with my husband, so that's where we stand now.